The Biden administration is very concerned about India. Why? Because India seems to be tilting or tilted in a pretty pro-Russian direction. The Indians are not marching to the Biden street band. And this is causing the Biden people a lot of discomfort. Now, obviously, India is not alone. There are many other countries that aren't marching either. But those countries are not so much of a big surprise. Iran, of course, is in the sort of the Russian orbit. China is, along with Iran, kind of a adversary of the United States and therefore doesn't mind making common cause with Russia. Even some of the other Arab countries are kind of in the same boat. But India has been moving in a pro-American direction. The Indian people, I sometimes say, and I don't mean this scientifically because I haven't seen any real evidence of this, but it seems on the ground that there's a very strong pro-American sentiment in India. Now, when I probe it further, I realize that the pro-American sentiment is really aimed at the America of 50 years ago. It's not aimed at the America of today. It's not as if the Indians are saying, yeah, we want more LGBTQ. Oh yeah, we want our kids to get pregnant out of wedlock. Oh yeah, we'd like to see the trans phenomenon come big time to India. Oh yeah, we want abortion on demand. No, the Indians want none of this. But what they do want is, well, it's probably a caricature or an exaggeration to say they want the America of the 1950s, but that's a pretty good way to understand it. They want India to be a society more like the America of an earlier era, an era of upward mobility. They want to have an open society, but also a society that is conscious of its own identity and its own roots. They like the idea of patriotism or nationalism. In India, Indians are very nationalistic. And now, India in the Cold War had a pro-Russian tilt. Part of this was because Kissinger convinced Nixon and convinced the United States to take a pro-Pakistan stance in the Cold War, and that caused India to go in the other direction and side with the Russians. But today, India is energy dependent on Russia. It also has strong military ties with Russia. The Russians supply a lot of the Indian military equipment. And so India has been very reluctant to come out against this invasion of Ukraine. Of course, the Indians say war is not a solution. It's better to solve these things with diplomacy. But the bottom line is the Indians are not siding with the Biden administration in embracing the type of sanctions that Biden has imposed. The Indians are like, we're not doing that. We're not following those. Putin has been in touch with Modi, and Modi, of course, is pro-American than previous Indian governments. I think Modi would like to have stronger ties with the United States. But I also think that Modi recognizes that under Biden and under the left, the United States is trying to impose values on the rest of the world that are not only alien to, but hostile to traditional cultures. There's one thing you can say about Indians: they are a traditional people. Strong emphasis on family, the idea of local communities. The Indians like to follow a kind of customary way of life. In fact, there are some customs, not always good ones, that endure for very long periods of time. So the last thing the Indians want is some massive shakeup of their own society. They don't necessarily want woke culture to come to India, and it already is. Some of it is unavoidable. It's coming through the movies, it's coming through television, so it's coming through the, it seems, unavoidable influence of American culture. But on top of that, you've got the pressure of the Biden administration. Well, how come you haven't had LGBTQ month in India? And the Indians are like, that's because we're never going to. So I think the Indians have realized that this American model of today is not one that they want to uncritically adopt. And so here's the Biden team trying to cajole India and kind of bring India into the American orbit but the Indians are resisting. And I guess part of what I'm saying is that the reason that they're resisting is that they don't like the values that the political left in America and in the West represent. So India would be a much more willing partner of the United States and of the West if you were able to say to these cultures like India, hey, listen, we want you to have stronger trade ties with the West. We want you to reduce your dependence, military and trade, on Russia. But we are not going to try to interfere with your cultural norms, with your religious norms. We're not going to browbeat you on issues that are not important to you, but perhaps important to us. The Indians, I think, would be much more receptive. But as it is, you can see on all fronts a certain anxiety about entering into full partnership with the Biden administration, and it's based upon, I think, a legitimate and understandable resistance to some very bad things that the Biden administration represents.